Surviving the Storm is brought to you tonight by Native Storm Shelters and Joe's Dixie Chopper.
Emergency 911.
Is this Ardmore?
Yes, it is.
Okay, did y'all have confirmation of the one on the ground just south of Long Grove?
No, we didn't. Emergency 911.
I am in Long Grove.
Okay.
I am a storm spotter. Can you please relay that there is massive power flashes in Long Grove? We've got a tornado on the ground in Carter County.
Sky was getting real green. I mean, it was like an emerald green.
Kind of started getting dark, and then you can tell the weather started changing. You know, it started getting windy, and then it started raining.
Everyone was kind of worried about the weather, but you know, we'd never experienced anything like that.
We picked up on that storm in its infancy somewhere around Nakona, probably southwest of there. Watched it basically organize.
And when the storms got going late in the very late afternoon into the early evening, we knew the environment was very primed for the storms to intensify.
It got dark and it traveled on further north, and when it got to around that Spanish Fort area, which is right along the Texas-Oklahoma border, is where things really started to ramp up, and we knew we were dealing with something pretty serious.
I'm west of Long Grove. I'm over on Anschutz Road up on the hill high. It's huge. All the electric has just gone out in Long Grove, all of it. There's no lights, but I watched it travel for about 2 miles. It was huge. It was on the ground.
Severe weather can change your life in an instant. In a severe weather situation, every moment counts.
And getting the most accurate information is crucial, and getting it fast can save your life.
Tonight, a look back at the 2009 Lone Grove tornado through the eyes of survivors.
That day, it was a real windy day, and it was warm.
I'd just gotten out of school. My mom and my dad were on the way to pick up my nephews from the bus stop, so we went to Burger King right afterwards, and you could just see that the clouds were not happy. They were very dark, very bold and big.
And it was a real strange noise. It wasn't really like the train noise that you hear. It was kind of like that, but there was more of a whine to it too.
We knew the environment was very primed for the storms to intensify, and that the tornado potential with those storms coming out of North Texas and moving into south central Oklahoma, we knew that the tornado potential would be even higher with those storms than it was earlier in the day.
Especially in February. You don't expect those kind of storms in February, especially that early in the year, but I mean, it was a perfect spring day. You know, things just lined up perfect, and that's one thing about these storms is they're unpredictable. Good days can produce nothing, and marginal days that you really don't think anything's going to happen produce monsters.
I was kind of watching it on the computer, and about the time it was for my wife to come home, I was watching, and there was that sail that started brewing up over Monte County.
The weird looking green. Real kind of started getting dark, and then you can tell the weather started changing. You know, it started getting windy, and then it started raining.
A guy y'all know is Doug Grace, friends of my son. He kind of warned us that there was a tornado headed towards Lone Grove, and he thought it was going to go right down the highway in Lone Grove, and so we started taking it pretty serious then.
As it went further northeast is when we saw two distinct wall clouds, two distinct tornadoes. One went up, and then the main tornado intensified, and that's when it got big, and that's when we knew it was strong. That was probably 10 to 15 miles to the southwest of Lone Grove.
Mom called me. It was about 7:23, and she told me, she said, you know, I love you. And she said, you know, I just want you to know, you know, everything's going to be okay, you know, we'll be fine. And then about that time, the sirens went off, because we lived, you know, close by the soccer field in Ardmore, and it scared me, you know. And I said, what are you going to do? And she's like, we're just going to stay here and ride it out. And if it's our time to go, it's our time to go, you know. And that was it. That was the last I heard from her.
We had a plan of what to do. Down at the bottom, there's a creek and there's a tin horn that's big, and we planned on getting in that tin horn when the tornado come.
Right before he got in and closed the door, he said that he actually could see the tornado. And so that's whenever it really became real, you know, that it was probably going to hit us.
Me and my nephew started running, and I was hollering at my wife, let's go, let's go. And we went, got down into the creek, and he got in, and then I was getting ready to go in, and didn't even realize my wife wasn't with us. And by that time, the tornado was on us. So we rode it out in that tin horn.
And he pushed me and my brother up against the wall, because you could actually feel the force of the tornado while we were in the cellar. And I just remember hearing him pray, and I remember hearing my brother start praying. And then all of a sudden, it was almost like it was silent, because the tornado was so loud whenever it was rolling over us. And then it was just gone. You could hear it traveling off after it hit us.
So I went out into the hallway, and my mom told me to stay away from the windows. And the house started to shake more. So I went over to her. I was very scared. And the last thing I remember of that house was that it was blowing over and the debris was just hitting my leg. Both me and my mom fell backwards. And I just let her go.
And there was a lot of debris, but we climbed out. I remember it was really dark and cold after the tornado, which was really weird, because before it was pretty humid, you know, and sticky.
I jumped out, and when I got up, I seen all the trees down, and I had a shop there right at, when we get out of the creek, you could see the shop was there, but I couldn't see the house. So when I got past the shop, I saw the house was still there, and my wife was at the front door hollering for me.
It was mind-blowing. I mean, thinking that my mom's house was there the last time I seen it, and then I go back and it's just her steps standing, you know.
It looked like a war and bombs hitting around. That's what I thought was how much damage there was.
I'll never forget this phone call, but I called her and I told her that Mom and Dad were not there, that they're not with us anymore, and she just said, no, I cannot believe you. I cannot believe you. And I'll never forget my niece and my nephew saying, what's wrong, Mommy, what's wrong? And I'll never forget that phone call.
My grandmother's house was destroyed, neighbors' houses. I mean, it was just amazing. Like, the frames of the houses were up in trees that were still actually there, because most of them were destroyed.
The Lone Grove tornado brought more than $3 million worth of damage, with the max wind speeds gusting upwards to 175 miles per hour. Now, since the Lone Grove tornado in 2009, radar technology has changed drastically, but no radar in the world can tell you what is on the ground. That's why storm spotters are critical to keeping you safe during a storm. We'll have that part of the story when Surviving the Storm continues.
On average, more than 1,200 tornadoes touch down per year in the U.S. 56 of those are in Oklahoma and 140 in Texas. And to break it down even further, Caddo County had 116 tornadoes, the most tornadoes in Oklahoma over the past 60-plus years. In Texoma, during that same time period, Pontotoc County had 56 tornadoes and Carter County 54, while in Grayson County 69 tornadoes touched down. Since the Lone Grove tornadoes in 2009, the National Weather Service says radar technology hasn't changed dramatically. However, one of the biggest advances is something called dual pol radar.
There's lots of different data that it gives us, but one of the things when it comes to tornadoes is not only can we see the rotation in the storm as we can with just any, the standard Doppler radar, but with dual pol radar, The way that we receive the data sometimes gives us an indication that we're looking at something that's not a raindrop or not a hailstone, but we're looking at something that's actually a physical object like leaves from a tree or debris from a home.
Breaking down the science of radar even further, let's pretend that our KTEN tower is the actual radar in Norman, Oklahoma. And whenever it sends out a beam, we'll pretend that this basketball is that beam. Whenever it gets sent out and it does not come back to me, that means there's no storm. It is clear. And if I receive that beam or the basketball back to me, that means that there is a storm out there.
Now, radar technology has improved since 2009. We have what's called dual pol radar, so we can measure different hailstones, kind of like these.
And we use the same exact radar that the meteorologists do at the National Weather Service.
Yeah, those high resolution models back in 2009 and before, those were pretty limited. You know, they were very experimental, and not very many people can see them now. Anybody can get online and see some of those very sophisticated models that we use every day to predict severe weather and tornadoes and severe hailstorms. So yeah, that's a big change from 2009, and just the availability of the data and the accuracy of the data.
The National Weather Service currently issues tornado warnings just like this one in Louisiana, where we have the polygon shape, where everyone in this polygon is under a tornado warning. And we will be seeing this concept kind of change as we go into the future here, since scientists are trying to model this concept of just like what we see during the hurricane season of the predictability cone. Now we'll try to implement that into a tornado warning, where we have that cone of uncertainty going out over the path of the tornado.
Since 2009, some things have changed, especially the use of social media. Meteorologists at the National Weather Service in Fort Worth and Norman have people that monitor social media during a severe weather event.
Today, we sometimes have multiple people in the office who are doing nothing but monitoring social media and putting information out on social media. That wasn't happening back then.
Social media is one of our most powerful tools in terms of us being able to instantly relay information out to the public. So Facebook Live and Twitter are great tools when tracking severe weather.
Check that radar out. We're sitting right there.
The National Weather Service doesn't just rely on social media to monitor storms. Storm spotters and storm chasers play a big role in tracking storms. One of those storm chasers back in 2009 was Chris Hare. He arrived in Lone Grove moments after the tornado hit in 2009. His story with surviving the storm continues.
There was a cold front that had set up around Wichita Falls, and honestly, on the day, I didn't think it was going to be a big day. Those days are either all or none.
My wife, she was in Duncan working, and then that day, it was a real windy day, and it was warm. And there was a lot of storms going around Lawton West.
We had a kind of an unusual severe weather event for February. That's not when we get the bulk of our tornadoes and severe weather. But anytime you get the right ingredients coming together, it can happen.
We saw the initial wall clouds form before it got dark. There were a few funnels that touched down, and I think the first real touchdown was probably right about dusk. Would have been right around Nakona or St. Joe.
Yeah, which, I mean, they knew, I guess, the weather was going to be bad that day, but he told us that, you know, we need to hurry up and get home.
Yeah, we hadn't heard about the tornado hitting the trailer park just southwest of us. We hadn't heard about that yet.
It's really kind of chaotic then, you know, the details of what happened, because this thing was big, it was strong. We knew it was going to do some damage, so we tried to get as close as we could behind it. We got to the trailer park and it was just utter devastation. There was nothing left. We didn't really even know we were in a trailer park outside of the trailers blowing around. Nobody was there as far as EMS, police, fire, because we were literally right behind it. The tornado had hit and we were probably 3.5 minutes behind it blowing over the trailer park. When we got there, people were still coming out, you know, and when you get into those places, it's a lot of disorientation, a lot of panic.
Said I was naked and the trailer park full of glass, debris, and all that fun stuff. That was scary, all by myself, without my parents. Didn't know where they were, if they were alive, but somehow I just knew that they weren't there anymore.
People are dirty, people are muddy, people are cut up and bruised, there's people trapped, there's people screaming for help, there's people in piles of debris screaming for help. There's little kids that are screaming for mom, screaming for dad. What do? You know, you talk to them, you try to comfort them, but we're not designed to do that.
The moment a tornado warning is issued for your county, that's when it's go time. Your family needs to find a safe spot. Now have a tornado safety plan, practice it often with your family, be prepared to put your plan into action once a tornado watch is issued. However, when a tornado warning is issued, stay away from windows and doors. Get inside a small room without outside walls at ground level, and if you live in a mobile home, get out immediately. Go to a sturdy building or shelter to ride out the storm or lie flat in a ditch. Now that severe weather season is upon us, is your town prepared? McKenna Eubank investigates.
I am a storm spotter, and I am out of touch with the group. Can you please relay that there is massive fire flashes along Grove? We've got a tornado on the ground in Carter County.
Scary. Very scary, very scary.
Tornadoes don't discriminate, but as seen in Lone Grove, they sometimes hit the hardest in the most vulnerable places.
They get a pretty good wind. It don't take much to tear them up or blow them down.
9 years after the twister flattened this mobile home community, some individual storm shelters were built outside of the homes. But some mobile home parks, like this one near Buncombe Creek Marina on Lake Texoma, aren't so prepared.
They ain't safe whatsoever. They're the first thing going to get blown away.
There's only 2 shelters within walking distance at this vacation spot. And what's worse, the locals tell KTEN the single warning siren hasn't worked for years.
Their only real form of notification could potentially be that storm or warning siren, telling them to get off the lake or to seek shelter or whatever the case may be.
When the sirens sound, will you hear them? We first reached out to local emergency managers with the intent of finding out what areas do not have working sirens. Because as Oklahoma's budget crisis continues, some counties are still strapped for cash. Marshall County Emergency Manager Robert Cheney tells KTEN a single siren can cost anywhere between $30,000 and $75,000.
I'm trying to find everything from grants to funding sources to be able to bring that on here in Marshall County.
Cheney says the problem is not that they don't have sirens.
We just don't have enough.
With the roar of a severe storm, sound only travels so far, but lives are on the line and dollar signs seem to be in the way. But local counties are doing the best they can.
You know, I'm kind of handcuffed because of the financial part of it, but we're doing everything we can to help. There are grants out there. I'm researching that, but that takes time. It's a process. Obviously, this coming spring storm season is going to be here before we know it.
Cheney says everyone should have a severe weather plan in place and a definite way to get notifications.
Now one more time, because this is very, very important. Underground shelter or safe room is best when possible. Otherwise, get into a small interior room or hallway on the lowest level of your house or sturdy building, but not in a mobile home. Get out and get to the nearest shelter. If you keep these things in mind, you and your family will be able to survive the storm.
To stay ahead of the storm means keeping your family safe.
Now, in the past 20 years, on average, 47 people will die each year by the underrated killer lightning.
And 25 million times a year, lightning strikes the United States.
And 1 in 13,000 people will get struck by lightning in their lifetime.
64% of the people hit by lightning are enjoying a leisure activity, like soccer, golf, or running. And if you're in or near the water, activities such as fishing, going to the beach, and boating top the list. So this spring and summer, when thunder roars, go indoors. And here are some other things to remember. When lightning is around, number 1, stay away from metal objects like fences, and keep in mind, if you can't get indoors, a car does provide some adequate safety away from lightning. I'll tell you, though, what doesn't, and one of the things that cause the most lightning strikes in people are being by trees. Lightning is attracted to tall objects. and is where most people get hit by lightning. When you're inside your home, yes, you're safe, but stay away from windows if the lightning's popping all around your house. And if you keep those things in mind, you'll survive the storm.
You know, you can't predict what's going to happen, but you can be there when it does, and you can tell people it's coming, and that's kind of what we tried to do that day.
We still rely on trained storm spotters, storm chasers, and on the evening of February 10, 2009, those spotters and chasers played a big role in helping us know what was going on.
Chasers are huge to outlets like KTEN, to outlets like the National Weather Service, because without them, you don't have eyes.
Now we're actually really prepared. Anytime that the weather gets bad, we have our bags packed with anything that we might need or want to have in case something does happen again.
The Lone Grove tornado was one of the first killer tornadoes I'd ever been behind. We'd seen damage, we'd seen people's lives turned upside down, people's houses lost, but I've never seen one that killed somebody.
I don't know what I'd give to have my mom back, you know, to talk to her. I mean, she's missed out on a lot, you know, her voice, you know, I miss her. And I know my grandkids miss her too, or her grandkids. It's just...
Obviously, the Lord was smiling down on somebody and made as minimal impact as possible. It could have been Ardmore, it could have been Sherman, it could have been Gainesville. Then what?